The scent of lilies and the echo of champagne-fueled laughter seemed to wrap everything in a bubble of artificial happiness at a luxurious Long Island, New York event hall. Helena, in her stunning wedding dress, watched the celebration with a smile on her face but an emptiness in her chest. Beside her, Thomas, her new husband, toasted effusively with his friends, a figure of charisma and success. Their wedding was considered the event of the year by New York society. For Helena's family, it was a dream come true. For Thomas's friends, it was the crowning achievement of his career. No one, not even Helena, seemed to notice the fine, almost invisible crack that stretched beneath the surface. The first sign came hours earlier, backstage. While the makeup artist retouched her lipstick, Helena overheard a muffled conversation from Thomas on the phone. He spoke of a show and of keeping up appearances. At first, she dismissed the conversation as pre-wedding stress. After all, Thomas was a businessman. The show, she thought, could be a business deal. The doubt, however, planted a seed of distrust in her heart. In the middle of Thomas's speech, when he looked at Helena and said, with a smile that was too wide, "This is the most important day of my life, the beginning of a new spectacle," she felt a shiver. The phrase echoed in her mind, mixing with the muffled conversation she had heard earlier. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was a mask, a performance. The party went on. The couple danced the waltz, cut the cake, and posed for photos. Thomas was the perfect groom, the embodiment of any woman's dream. Helena, however, began to look for something that wasn't real, for a flaw in the facade of perfection. The flaw came in the form of a crumpled note that fell from Thomas's pocket when he hugged a friend. On it, a woman's handwriting drew a heart, and a simple yet cruel message: "Can't wait for our next spectacle. Kisses, Jay." Helena's heart stopped. Jay was the name of Thomas's intern. The seed of distrust planted earlier began to sprout into a tree of bitterness. Helena, with the note in her hand, felt her world crumble. The marriage, the love, the life she imagined. Everything seemed like a lie. The phrase "just a show" took on a new and terrible meaning. As the party continued, Helena, with the crumpled note hidden in the palm of her hand, realized that the small discrepancies she had once ignored were in fact pieces of a cruel puzzle. Thomas, for example, a real estate magnate, had a peculiar obsession with presentations and perspectives. He frequently talked about the product, which, she now realized with cold dread, was their very lives. Thomas's facade was perfect. The custom-tailored suit, the $50,000 watch, the radiant smile he distributed to all the guests. However, Helena remembered a time they were at a charity art auction, and a friend of Thomas's had whispered something about his perfect life being an excellent investment. At the time, she thought it was just a compliment to their relationship. Now the phrase sounded like a transaction. Their life, the marriage, was the investment. She was the trophy. The setting they moved in was a world of contracts, appearances, and silent agreements. The Long Island elite, whom Thomas masterfully courted, were not there to celebrate love, but to witness a union of power. Helena's father, a retired judge, had praised Thomas's ability to negotiate the union, ensuring a solid financial future for his daughter. Helena, on the other hand, was the antithesis of this world. She was a photographer, passionate about capturing reality, the imperfect beauty of everyday life. Her studio, filled with photographs of genuine moments and raw landscapes, was her sanctuary. Before meeting Thomas, she had promised herself that she would never compromise her art or her truth for status. However, the note in her hand was proof that she had lost her way, accepting a fairy tale that was, in fact, a script. The antagonist, the J from the note, was an intern named Jessica. Helena knew her, an ambitious and intelligent young woman, whom Thomas had repeatedly praised for her ability to understand a business vision. She now realized that Thomas's vision was for a double life, where Jessica was the co-star of a secret romance, while Helena was the stage wife. Jessica's smile, which once seemed shy, now seemed like a shared secret. With the truth forming in her mind, Helena's innocence turned into cold fury. The pain gave way to a determination. She would not be the passive victim of the story. She would not allow Thomas's show to end with their wedding as a box office success. She would make this stage her premiere, and his performance, his downfall. Helena, with the note hidden in her dress, felt the weight of the betrayal like a cold stone in her stomach. She moved away from the crowd, heading towards a balcony overlooking the meticulously manicured garden. There she found Thomas talking to Jessica, the intern, in a more secluded corner. Their proximity, the knowing smiles they exchanged, was all the proof she needed. He was openly cheating on her, right in the middle of his own wedding party. His audacity was an insult. The conflict, which was once a seed, was now a hungry monster. What would Helena do? Confront him there, in front of everyone? That would give him a chance to deny it, to turn the situation to his favor. He was a master of manipulation. She knew that a public argument would not result in her revenge, but in a scandal for which she would be blamed. No. She needed something more, something that would hit him where it hurt the most, in his reputation and his image as the perfect man. Instead of confronting him, Helena decided to use the tools she herself had. She took her phone, which was in her purse, and discreetly began to film the interaction between Thomas and Jessica. The camera, her longtime companion, was now her weapon. The recording, which captured Jessica's laughter and Thomas's hand on her back, was the first step of her revenge. The plan was forming in her mind, quick and cold. Helena's anger turned into strategy. She was not a woman of confrontations, but an observer. And as an observer, she knew that the truth was hidden in the details. She remembered an occasion when Thomas had installed a security system in his office, boasting about the total visibility he had over his business. Helena, who had previously ignored the conversation, now saw an opportunity. Thomas had bragged about having access to all the security cameras, including those in his private office. Helena's determination was steel. She was not going to cry or lament. She was going to act. The main conflict, which was the betrayal, now had a new obstacle: the need to collect evidence. Thomas was not a common adversary. He was a man of power and influence, and she could not afford to make mistakes. Her every move needed to be calculated, every action, a part of a larger plan. She would not be the victim of the story, but the architect of her own justice. Helena reconnected with the party, but now with a purpose. The smile that was once of nervousness was now of cold determination. Her mission was clear: to gather more information, but without arousing suspicion. She danced with her father, laughed with her mother, and even accepted a toast from one of the bridesmaids. Each interaction was a performance, an act that disguised the whirlwind of emotions stirring inside her. The time pressure was real. The party would end in a few hours, and with it, the chance to act discreetly. A subplot began to unfold when Helena approached Daniel, Thomas's best friend and the best man. Daniel, a reserved and seemingly loyal man, had always treated her with a kindness that contrasted with Thomas's arrogance. In a moment of casual conversation, Helena asked him about Thomas's new assistant. Daniel hesitated, a small pause that did not go unnoticed by Helena. He quickly changed the subject, but his brief silence had already spoken volumes. Helena's relationship with her father, the judge, was also a significant subplot. Her father, a man of law, always valued integrity and truth. He had warned Helena in the past about Thomas's impetuous nature, but she, blinded by love, had not listened. Now she knew her father could be a crucial ally, but she needed to be sure she had concrete evidence before involving him. She didn't want him to lose faith in her again. As the party wound down, Helena realized that the urgency of her plan was increasing. She needed access to the security cameras in Thomas's office. She knew he had a laptop with all the access and remembered seeing the device in their hotel suite. To succeed, she needed an excuse to go to the room before Thomas. It was then that she devised a plan. She would forget something in their hotel suite, something essential for the end of the party. A perfect excuse to discreetly leave the ballroom. The love story she lived with Thomas was a facade, and now she was using the same facade to unmask him. Every lie, every fake smile was being used against him, with a convincing excuse that She needed a bridal handkerchief her grandmother had insisted she take. Helena went up to the suite. The door closed behind her, and the quiet of the room contrasted brutally with the chaos she felt inside. The suite, which should have been the sanctuary of the newlywed, felt like a trap. Helena found Thomas's laptop on his bedside table. It was on, but password protected. She didn't despair. Thomas, in his arrogance, used simple passwords, often related to personal achievements. The first attempt, the name of his favorite football team, failed. The second, his birthday, also failed. But the third, the company's name, Thomas and Associates, worked and the laptop opened. The ease with which she accessed his secrets was almost an insult. What she found, however, was the real turning point. It wasn't just the password, but a folder on his desktop brazenly titled Projects. Inside, there were videos, hundreds of them. They weren't business videos. They were recordings from the security cameras in his office, the family's country house, and even his car. What was even more shocking was that he wasn't just cheating on her with Jessica. There were other women, a different intern, the secretary, the receptionist. Their marriage wasn't just a show. It was a play on a stage of countless betrayals. The twist was brutal. The shock of the singular betrayal with Jessica was replaced by the nausea of a pattern of lies. The Thomas she knew, the man she loved, never existed. He was a predator, a collector of conquests, and she was the biggest one. The pain of having been the most deceived was stronger than that of having been betrayed. The anger gave way to a cold and calculating determination. She didn't just want revenge, she wanted justice. She wanted him to feel the pain she felt. Helena did not cry. She felt a cold numbness, a clarity that only mass betrayal could bring. Instead of simply downloading the videos, she created a link and sent it to her own email, as well as to her best friend, her maid of honor, her father, and a few other trusted contacts. She knew she needed backups. She was ready to destroy Thomas's life, but she wanted to make sure he couldn't get away with it. Helena's numbness was quickly replaced by a cold clarity and an urgent need to act. The wedding, which was once a celebration, turned into a trap, and she found herself with the task of disarming it. The cell phone recording and the link from Thomas's computer were her weapons. Helena, with her heart beating at a feverish pace, returned to the party. Her posture, however, had changed. She was no longer the naive bride. She was the strategist. Her gaze swept the room, evaluating the people, the interactions, the dynamics. Every face she saw, every smile she received, seemed false. She felt like a stranger in her own life. She approached Daniel, the best man, and whispered in his ear, "I need a favor. Can you meet me in the kitchen in 10 minutes?" Daniel's confused look turned to concern when he saw the seriousness on Helena's face. He nodded, and she knew he was an ally. In the kitchen, she showed him the recording from her phone. Thomas and Jessica, smiling and laughing, with an intimacy that was not that of a boss and his intern. Daniel was shocked. He wasn't just a friend of Thomas's. He was his longtime business partner. Thomas's betrayal was not only of Helena, but of Daniel's trust as well. Daniel then revealed a crucial piece of information. Jessica had been hired at Thomas's request, bypassing the company's standard selection process. He had argued that she was an unexplored talent. Helena realized that Thomas's betrayal was even deeper. He was compromising the integrity of their own company. With Daniel's help, Helena devised the next phase of her plan. They needed more than just the videos. They needed a way to make them public, and they needed to do it in a way that Thomas couldn't escape. They had little time as the end of the party was approaching, and with it, the moment of revenge. The shock of the betrayal and the discovery of Thomas's laptop did not crush Helena. They transformed her. The woman who had come to the altar with the hope of a lifetime of love and loyalty was now a cold and calculating strategist. She was no longer a bride, but an avenger. Her first step of growth was acceptance. She stopped questioning what Thomas did and focused on what she would do. Her pain, which was once silent and lonely, was channeled into action. The camera, her longtime companion, was no longer a tool to capture the beauty of the world, but to expose its ugliness. She became the narrator of the story, and the protagonist of her own revenge. The challenge now was to navigate her new identity. The task of exposing Thomas required a level of cunning and coldness that she never imagined she possessed. She needed to manipulate the social world that Thomas so prized, using the same rules he used to control her. Helena's growth also manifested in her relationship with Daniel. The best man, who was once just an acquaintance, became her accomplice. The trust she placed in him and the loyalty he showed was proof that not everyone in her world was fake. This unexpected alliance was a crucial reminder that friendship and loyalty still existed, and that the truth would prevail. The final moment of the party was approaching. The toast of the newlyweds. Thomas was preparing to make a final speech, a celebration of his perfect life. But Helena would not be a passive audience. Overcoming her pain and her growth as a person were crucial for her to be ready for the next step. The naive bride no longer existed. In her place, there was a woman with a plan, ready to make her debut on the stage of revenge. As the party drew to a close, the tension in the ballroom was almost palpable. The guests, who had previously laughed and toasted without a care, were now preparing for the final act of the night, Thomas's speech. Helena, however, had prepared for a different ending. The plan which she and Daniel had devised in the kitchen was ready to be executed. Daniel, as best man, took the stage for his speech. He didn't make a toast, but a sincere and moving tribute to Helena, her strength and her art. His speech, which was a clear contrast to Thomas's false exaltation, was a moment of relief and truth for Helena. Daniel ended his speech with a toast to new beginnings, a phrase that, under the circumstances, had a double meaning. Then Daniel handed Thomas a remote control, saying it was a wedding gift for the sound and projection system that Helena's family had installed for the event. Thomas, with a superior smile, thanked him, unaware that the remote control was, in fact, the weapon of his own destruction. Helena then went up to the stage next to Thomas. She took the microphone, and the bride everyone knew was back. She smiled, her face displaying the calm that betrayal had taught her. "Before my husband's speech," she said, her voice clear and firm, "I wanted to share a small gift with everyone. A souvenir, so that this day will be, in fact, unforgettable." At that moment, she took the remote control from Thomas's hands, and, with a quick touch, a small light turned on. The guests looked at the big screen, expecting to see childhood photos of the couple or a romantic montage. What they saw, however, was the beginning of Thomas's nightmare. The screen went dark, and a title appeared in bold letters. The Life of Thomas, a Story of Success. The climax was about to begin. The romantic music in the ballroom was abruptly replaced by a dramatic soundtrack. The lights went out, except for a spotlight that focused on the large screen. Thomas, with the microphone in his hand and a confused smile on his face, looked at Helena, not understanding what was happening. What followed was a succession of short but devastatingly clear videos. The first was a clip of Thomas in his office, openly flirting with Jessica. The second showed him at a dinner table, making jokes about the engagement, calling Helena the trophy bride. The third was a compilation of Thomas kissing other women, in different locations with the caption, "The wedding is just the beginning. More betrayals for the year 2025. Each video was a stab in Helena's heart, but for Thomas, it was a direct blow to his reputation. The screen showed everyone his true face, that of a man who saw life as a game, marriage as a business, and love as a performance. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by a murmur of shock. Helena's parents, sitting in the front row, looked at the screen with a mixture of horror and despair. Thomas's father, a real estate magnate, shook his head in disapproval. Thomas, in a panic, ran to the projection table, trying to turn off the equipment, but Daniel stopped him. The room was in chaos. The show that Thomas had promised everyone had turned into his own humiliation. Helena, at the center of the stage, looked at Thomas, her face emotionless, her eyes cold. She felt no pity, only the satisfaction of a successful revenge. Then, the final twist. The screen changed to a video of Thomas, in a conversation with a friend, bragging about how he manipulated the bidding process to win a multi-million-dollar contract. The caption read, "How I Stole the City's Money." Thomas's betrayal was not just personal, it was professional. The corruption, which was once just a suspicion, was now proof. The climax did not end with a hug or a kiss. It ended with a scream of panic from Thomas as the police entered the hall, alerted by Daniel and Helena. He would not just be a betrayed man, he would be a criminal. The hall, which hours earlier was a stage of joy, was now a scene of chaos. The police, alerted by Daniel, took Thomas into custody, and the silence that followed was filled with whispers and the heavy breathing of shock. Helena, standing on the stage, saw the life she had imagined fall apart in a single brutal moment. But surprisingly, there was no pain. There was a sense of relief, of justice. She was no longer the betrayed bride, but the woman who exposed the truth. The consequences of Helena's actions were immediate and profound. Thomas, in addition to facing charges of corruption and fraud, had his reputation destroyed. The company he had built with lies and betrayals was now under investigation. Jessica, the intern, was fired and had her potential career ruined. The guests, the Long Island elite, dispersed, ashamed and shocked. The life that Thomas had cultivated for years collapsed. The conclusion of Helena's story was not that of a traditional happy ending. She was not saved by a Prince Charming, and her marriage was not restored. The conclusion was that she saved herself. She did not become a passive victim. She became a force of nature, using her observational skills and her knowledge of Thomas's weaknesses to dismantle his life. Helena's father, the judge, looked at his daughter with a new admiration. He hugged her and said, "You stayed true to yourself. I'm proud." His words, more than any revenge, were the healing she needed. Daniel, the best man who remained by her side throughout the turmoil, became a loyal friend, a reminder that loyalty and integrity still existed in her world. 6 months later, Helena's wedding dress was in a box, dusty and forgotten. She had returned to photography, but now with a new intensity and passion. The photos she took were more raw, more honest, and full of life. The pain of betrayal had freed her, allowing her to see the world in a way she had never seen before. Thomas, for his part, was awaiting trial, his life of luxury and power reduced to a prison cell. Helena's revenge was not just an action, it was the first chapter of her new story. The marriage of Helena and Thomas, which began with the promise of a happy ending, ended in an act of revenge and self-determination. Helena's story is a reminder that the truth, however painful, is the first step towards freedom. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts on this exciting story and what you learned from Helena's journey in the comments.